Thank you, all of you, for coming here. I feel really humbled because I don't know whether I'm qualified to talk in front of such experts and people of your intellectual standing. Professor Singh has, very briefly, he put the most difficult questions. How long would it take, and what is the future, and which is not an easy thing to answer. However, I think the Syrian crisis has many factors that produced it in the first place. When the Arab Spring started, so-called Arab Spring, it's not our terminology and it's not really expressive of what's going on in the Arab world. I am a specialist of Percy Bysshe Shelley, the British poet. And you know, in The Mask of Anarchy, he said, if winter comes, can't spring be far behind? I think winter is the one that arrived in the Arab world, and we hope that spring cannot be far behind. But it's not already an Arab Spring. Anyway, the reasons, I believe, or the factors that produced the Syrian crisis are multifaceted, and they are at many levels, and they are very different factors. I don't think it is correct to say that there is one thing that brought us into this kind of war that we are living in here. When events started in Syria on the 15th of March 2011, we all thought that what we have to do is to answer the legitimate demands of the Syrian people. And what we have to do is to respond to the legitimate grievances of the Syrian people. None of us claims that we are living in a Plato republic and that we don't have grievances, we don't have poverty, we don't have complaints by people. I served as a cabinet minister between 2003 and 2008, so I know also firsthand what injustices are there. But with this background, the Syrian government hastened to what I thought at the time were very radical and brave decisions, which were announced on the 24th of March 2011, which is less than 10 days after events started in Daraa. And I was the one who gave a press conference announcing all these decisions reached by the Syrian leadership. And people felt very good and went out to dinner, and everybody felt that the crisis will be over, because if these were implemented, then the crisis will be over. Including these reforms included, whatever political steps need to be taken, should be taken. Whether it is reviewing the constitution, conducting parliamentary election, conducting municipality elections, whatever. There was nothing that's sacred enough not to be put at the table. And the process started of implementing these resolutions, of reviewing our constitution. The major element at the time was that Syria is governed by one-party rule, and it should be a plural system. There should be political parties in the country. So the item, it's called Article 8 in our constitution, that speaks about one-party rule, was crossed out from the new constitution, and pluralism was introduced into our constitution, and many other reforms, political reforms. However, the surprising factor for us was that the stronger we pressed ahead with these reforms, the more vicious the media campaign and the regional and the international campaign got against Syria. I think if you ask anybody in Syria on the 24th of March 2011, would this crisis last 2 years, they would have said, no, it won't last 2 weeks. And then, many factors were brought into the crisis, like the West decided that President Assad has to give up his presidency. He has to stand down from office. They have to change the way the country is being ruled. And for the 2 years, as you probably follow up, they had been trying to create an opposition, really. That is the right word. They started with a council in Tunisia, and then a year after, Hillary Clinton, who was in Tunisia to establish a Syrian National Council, came up and said that doesn't represent the Syrian people. So they put whoever they want to represent the Syrian people, then they take them off the list that they no longer represent the Syrian people, and then they started with this coalition in Doha. Most of these people, with respect, they have been out of the country for so many years. They know nothing about what's going on in the country. And even if they come to the country to stand elections, I don't think they will have 10 people to elect them. But we're not fighting over that. We don't have any issue with that. The issue we have is that the Arab League, and this was the really most damaging factor for Syria, that the Arab League started by expelling Syria out of the Arab League. And then they decided to have an Arab commission to come to Syria to see what is happening in Syria and to write their report to the Arab League. The commission was headed, as you remember, by General Dabi, Mustafa Dabi from Sudan. And for the good luck of Syria, he is an honorable man who really did an excellent plan all over the country, distributed his team, and in 2 or 3 months concluded his report, which he submitted to the Arab League, hoping that after this report, he will put a full plan to quench the crisis in Syria. He was surprised that when he submitted his report to the Arab League, his term was put to an end. And his report was not even read by the Arab League, and the issue of Syria was moved from the Arab League level to the Security Council level, to the United Nations level. So they sent another UN mission headed by General Robert Maud from Norway. Again, they spent about 3 or 4 months in Syria. They traveled in all cities, and they wrote in their report that there are armed people in Syria who are firing on civilians. By the way, this was the sentence that caused ending the term of General Dabi, because General Dabi said the demonstrators are not only peaceful demonstrators. There are people who are carrying arms, shooting at civilians, accusing the government of shooting these civilians, something that the Arab League did not want at all. So again, the term of Robert Maud was brought into an end. Kofi Annan came along. Kofi Annan put his 6-point plan, as you remember. The 6-point plan starts with the first item, stopping violence by all sides, moving to round table to dialogue, releasing all political prisoners, discussing and deciding the political future of Syria by the Syrian people, to which we immediately agreed. When I say we as a government, we immediately agreed to the 6-point plan of Kofi Annan. Kofi Annan visited Damascus over 3 times, and what he was saying in private, he said after he left his office, when he was signing his book, he said the reason why he couldn't reach a solution to the Syrian crisis is that the countries who were financing and arming the Syrian rebels were continuing to do so and were refusing to stop the armament of the Syrian rebels. As I said yesterday to our friend, the journalist, unfortunately, Western officials only speak the truth in their memoirs. But when they are in office, they never feel obliged to speak the truth. While what we need is for an official to say the truth when he is an official, not after they leave office. Because once they leave office, it doesn't matter really. It's for history. But it doesn't make any difference on the ground. So Kofi Annan left, and then Lakhdar Brahimi came to Damascus. At every juncture, the Syrian government is the one who supported every single plan of these, because every single plan starts with stopping violence by all sides. And with every single plan, the so-called opposition abroad, they refused to cooperate. Now, the most important now political effort that was made to solve the crisis in Syria, we believe, is the Geneva Accord. Because there you have the United States, Russia, Europe, China, everybody, who met in Geneva and who reached a communique with 5 points plan, which is really more or less the Kofi Annan 6 points plan, to stop violence in Syria and to release political prisoners and to sit around the table for dialogue and to discuss the political future of Syria. Once again, the Syrian government welcomed that plan and expressed readiness to work with it. But until today, the opposition that is abroad says we don't sit around the table unless President Assad leaves office. We don't sit around the table, we don't stop violence until we change this regime and this system. And yet, all people ask me, most people, why don't you agree to dialogue? Because the international media never highlights that the Syrian government accepts dialogue. It is the opposition that refuses to sit for a dialogue. They never highlight, although it's a very simple fact and it's available everywhere and everybody knows it. But they don't highlight that. They just keep things vague for ordinary people. As you are all aware, there is a very huge media war that is taking place against Syria, besides the war on the ground. In the meantime, while I am here, mentioning to you General Dabi, General Mott, Kofi Annan, Brahimi, in the meantime, in these 2 years, over 2 million Syrian people have been displaced. Thousands of people have been orphaned. Thousands of women have been widowed. Tens of thousands of people have been killed. So with every passing day is a tragedy for Syria and for the Syrian people. But unfortunately, those who are taking a pretext of President Assad or the Syrian system do not care about the Syrian people. I don't think the Syrian people figure anywhere on their map, whether we die or we live. That's beside the point. In the meantime, so much of our country has been destroyed. I honestly am talking to you, and I feel as if I'm having a nightmare. Even between me and myself now, there's a monologue saying, is this true? Is this happening to my country? That over 3,800 schools had been destroyed and burned. 1,800 factories had been dismantled and looted to Turkey. So many of our museums have been totally looted. So much of our archaeology had been looted. Our pipelines have been destroyed. Our roads had been destroyed. Our best professionals, our best scientists, our best pilots, our best Air Force defense have been killed and destroyed. It is a war against Syria. It's against the Syrian people. It's against the Syrian infrastructure. It is against the future of Syria. And if you remember the Iraqi scenario, you can be sure this is a replica of the Iraqi scenario. targeting scientists, targeting professionals, schools, universities, museums, infusing sectarian language and sectarian behaviors into our society, into our system. You have fundamentalist groups who would stand on the roads, who would kill any woman that appears in the bus, or would take any woman on that bus and rape her and then kill her in the name of Islam, who would kill any person from the minorities, Christian or Shiite or Alawite, in the name of Islam. As a Muslim woman, I know that what they are doing is the absolute opposite of what Islam is. It has nothing to do with Islam. Many people ask me, how did your relationship with Turkey deteriorate? It was such a good relationship. And how did it turn so sour? I can tell you that Syria, as a secular system, we had a good relationship with Turkey and a good relationship with Hamas, for example, the Palestinian organization. Although we are secular and they are not secular, but we saw the political side overriding over the religious side. In this Syrian crisis, we can say that the Turkish government has turned out to be a Muslim brother government, more than a political government that governs Turkey. And I'm not saying that only from my own head. You can follow the Turkish press and see what Turkish people are saying, and what Turkish journalists and what Turkish politicians are saying. So the crisis in Syria is very acute. It is the Syrian people, it is Syria that is paying the price. It is now two-dimensional. It is jihadi and fundamentalist with Al-Qaeda and Jabhat al-Nusra formulating the mainstream of the fighters in Syria. And it is also a regional war, spearheaded by Turkey and Qatar. Turkey is allowing anyone who wants to go to Syria to fight. We have 900 kilometers borders with Turkey. Obviously, no country can control such a long border, especially when in a state of war. So our borders with Turkey are really the door to bring into Syria these horrible fundamentalist elements who are killing the Syrian people, butchering the Syrian people, and introducing a very hateful sectarianism into Syria. I can say to you, as people who are living in India, what is happening in Syria is very dangerous to India, to Russia, to China, to the entire world, because this Wahhabi way of thinking doesn't know any borders. And they could be in Iraq in 2003, in Syria in 2013, and anywhere you want in the future. I was asked, what if Russia changes its mind? I said, Russia will not change its mind because it's defending itself also in Syria. God forbid, if anything happens to Syria, Iran would be weakened, trouble will start in Russia, and probably in China, and probably in India. You have to be, please, very careful in your country. Do not allow such symptoms to grow as we allowed them to grow in Syria. And do not think that a religious lesson here and a religious appearance there is an easy thing to do. No, one should not allow these things to happen because there is money behind it and it can get out of control. In Syria, mosques were mushrooming for the last 10 years, for the last 20 years. And money was coming from Gulf countries, and we didn't do anything about it in the name of liberty and in the name of people's rights. But I think the best liberty one can secure for one's citizens is for the state to be strong and good for its citizens. Because once the state is weakened, then the suffering of the people get to the maximum. Now, what is the future prospect? How do I see things? Personally, I believe that the war that is being fought in Syria is a war that aims at destroying Syria, just as they destroyed Iraq. And this is not an exaggeration to say that they destroyed Iraq. You know, Iraq is on the verge of partition. Iraq is not able to do anything now. Sudan is partitioned. Yemen is in trouble. Libya is in trouble. I feel there is a whole design for the entire region to partition the region into ethnic or religious states so that a Jewish state would be normal and would probably override all the states. They are already looting everything that has any relation to do with Judaism from our countries. So in 100 years' time, you know, they would probably create a very different reality in the Middle East. That's what they dream of, but our people will not allow them. So if the intention, although I know that not the intention, if the intention really is to stop this war, the intention by the US, and Europe, I can't see why they should, if their intention was to destroy Syria. But if they reach now the conviction that they can't defeat our army, they can't defeat our country, and they would like to stop this war can be stopped in one day, really. If there is a political will by the US agreeing with Russia to stop this war. But if there is no such political will to stop this war, and if the scenario of destroying Syria is desired by these forces to go on, it could be a very, very bleak future for Syria and for the Syrian people. Now, our army is strong, and our country is strong, and our army is not going to be defeated in 1 week or 1 month or 1 year. But my God, at what cost? How many people are being killed, both from the army and from the citizens and from the people? And whose interest is there to have all this war raging on and on and on? It's certainly neither the interest of the Syrian people, nor the interest of the Syrian government, nor the interest of any Syrian anywhere, really. But it's the interest of those who target Syria. It's the interest of the enemies of Syria and of the enemies of the Arab world. However, I do believe that what's happening in the entire Arab region is something that will have positive consequences in the long run. I don't believe that the Arab people are going to accept fundamentalists ruling Arab countries. And I have the good positive example of Egypt. Usually, probably a Muslim Brothers government would rule for a year or two before people come up against it. In Egypt, they didn't rule for months, and the people are coming up against a Muslim Brother government. By and large, Arab people are secular people, like Indian people. They're secular people. They are not conservative. They are not fundamentalists. They are not jihadists. And therefore, I feel that this fluid period, if you want, will be used by the Arab people to create real independence and to create real future for Arab people, which we deserve. Since Sykes-Picot in 1917 until now, we did not have true independence, although officially we were independent. But not because I'm Syrian, but I can claim that Syria was truly independent. Syria was able to stand against the Iraq-Iran war, in favor of Iran against Saddam Hussein, when the West was supporting Saddam Hussein and the Gulf states were supporting Saddam Hussein. Syria stood against the occupation of Kuwait. Syria stood against the occupation of Iraq in 2003. Syria stood against attacking Lebanon in 2006. Syria stood against attacking Gaza in 2008. Syria was able to make its stands in favor of the Arabs, not only of Syria. But by and large, Arab countries are not truly independent, because the most important independence is the independence of will and mind. But my personal analysis is that the Arab world is fighting wars of independence. And I'm sure in 5-10 years' time, Arab countries will be truly independent. At that time, we will forge our secular identity. And the Arabs of 400 million people will have a very good place, which they deserve in the international community. Thank you very much.